something that like just happened to me that relates to the very end of the episode 6 in a way, and I want to try to like tie these threads together very quickly. One is that I just got off a call right before this with a group of college students in the US, Franklin and Marshall College, some college in the US, and they had some like foreign policy book club. They had read my previous book, not the one behind me, Grand Strategies of the Left. And so it's about progressive foreign policy. And they had all kinds of questions. So I'm like asking them questions. I didn't go in prepared at all. And like, I hadn't even looked at my own book in a while. So like, I was a little bit like uncertain how it was going to go. But what I ended up telling them, which I had not planned to tell them, was that that book is almost overtaken by events. Progressive foreign policy is a mode of doing politics and demanding things of the state that like is only really relevant if you have like a liberal democratic terrain. Like you need a liberal political order in order for those kinds of demands to make any kind of sense, you know? And I ended up telling them about like Mao's 3-nested theory of warfare and like how our conjuncture has fundamentally shifted. We're now in a mode where it's like people power, civil disobedience, general strikes. If it turns to gunplay, then it's time for community self-defense. It's time to go to the mountains. You know what I mean? Like, and like there's a scenario where that ends up being the requirement of us. And we shouldn't want that because we'll probably lose that. It can happen.
Probably.
It can happen.
Yeah.
You never know. Malcolm Harris might be really good with a AK.
We might have to edit out that part too. At some point, we might want him on the show.
Yeah. This is my real-time thinking that I was sharing with them literally an hour and a half ago, you know? But it made me realize, too, that, like, at the end of episode 6, when news in Coruscant breaks of this heist in Aldhani, that it succeeded, that a group of rebels had stolen the payroll, the Imperial payroll, it's in the front page news. People are talking about it. And they tell Luthen, like people on the street tell Luthen about it. And they're like, hey, do you have any antiquities from Aldhani? Yeah. And literally, Tony Gilroy juxtaposes that news of the spectacle, news of the deed, with Senator Mon Mothma in the chamber, in the Senate, giving a speech proposing, I don't know what it was, but it was like the equivalent of like, let's reprogram 2% of our imperial defense budget to climate change. Or it was something like that, you know, like fucking, it was progressive foreign policy is what it was. That shit. And then everybody, all the other senators are leaving in the middle of her speech because they find out about the spectacle of the deed. It couldn't have been this more perfect.
Yeah.
Your mode of politics is fucked. You can't do progressive foreign policy anymore, Mon Mothma. And what has overtaken the conjuncture has been reshaped, and now it's time for something different. That's why Luthen is like fucking feeling it, like, you know, he's like, yes, baby. I thought that was like a spectacular ending, and it was so resonating with this thing that just happened to me an hour ago.
No, I mean, I think my one thought is just that the show, I don't feel like condescends to Mon Mothma's political engagements, right? It's not saying she's dumb or naive, because she's already funding this extra stuff, but it's just, you know, people are trying to fight on ground that's being lost, but see, you know, they don't know what's going to happen, right? I feel like that's the core thing that when you're teaching history, I try to emphasize with my students is just like, we can be smug about what happened and smug about the people, but the people at the moment could be incredibly intelligent and not really know what happened. And again, I guess I'll be the like town optimist or whatever, but yeah, I hadn't thought about that juxtaposition, but it's like very, very smart, and the kind of thing that like a visual medium just can nail in a way that it's hard to do in other mediums, right? Of having the literal cross-cutting.
Yeah. Yeah. And she, like, those are her two modes of politics. It's like she's financing the op, and then at the same time, she's doing the electoral speech making in the chamber of the Senate. Now it's like, well, the universe is telling you that one of these things isn't going anywhere. You know?
Right.
Well, but I guess like another reading of this is that she's kind of also doing what Luthen is doing, that she has this public-facing persona that she puts on, which is this electoral figure that's just proposing incrementalist measures that, you know, within the system, she's she's speaking the language of the elite. She's behaving like a fellow elite.
So
She's
performance.
She's in a way like a servant of like this elite structure in the same way that Luthen is a servant of the actual elites.
Yeah.
And then she has this other persona where she's funding this inchoate resistance movement, armed resistance movement.
Yeah.